Ja moi! No nyt meidän täytyy sitä...
No niin, luonnostunti on käytetty ja mä oon tänne laittanut numeroita pöytiin. Sulla on pöytä 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Te löydätte nimilapustanne. Ei tämä niin tarkkaa ole. Ja toivottavasti vielä, väkikatto ei ollut ihan näin kova, että toivottavasti väkeä tulee vielä tulee sieltä takaisin tänne meidän iltapäivään, koska meillä on paljon mielenkiintoista tässä iltapäivälläkin tarjolla. Herrat, teidän nimilapuissa on pienet numerot, niin menkää sen pienen numeron osoittamaan pöytään. Tuolla on pöytä 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ja 6. Ja sulla löytyy. Ja jos ei ole nimilappua, niin voitte sitten mennä semmoiseen pöytään, jossa voit valita sitä. Selvä. Mutta nyt aloitetaan. Meillä sen.
Tietokoneen lähelle vastaan.
Tosiaan, kuten mä tuossa ennen lounasta lupasin, niin meillä tässä on pöytätyöskentelyä, mutta ennen pöytätyöskentelyä niin me kuullaan kuulumisia EU-tasolta, eli millä tavalla tämä CLLD, mitä CLLD kuuluu EU-tasolle ja minkälaisia aatoksia tulevaisuudesta on. Ja meillä on täällä Skypen välityksellä Paul, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. There's a bit of echo, but I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So we have here Mr. Paul Soto. Paul is the senior policy analyst working in the ENRD contact point, and ENRD stands for the European Network for Rural Development. And Paul is our dear colleague in Brussels, and you are a great expert linked to the LEADER and CLLD issues, and CLLD stands for Community-Led Local Development. And you have been working with the guidelines with the CLLD, and then you have also history being a leader manager, right, in a couple of years ago. But now you are working for the European level, and you know all the gossips, what's there around everything in Brussels. So we are very eager to hear some issues linked to the CLLD as well, if you have some rural rumors around it. But we ask you to give some words about the CLLD in European Union at the moment. So what's the current situation, and also what kind of benefits you see the CLLD gives for the rural development, and if you have something in your mind about for the coming program period. So we are very happy to hear that as well. Hopefully, at least now the connection seems to be working nicely. So hopefully the lines will be open all the way during this half an hour. But the floor is yours. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you very much, Juha-Matti. I feel it's a real shame that I can't be there with you. I feel a bit like an astronaut with these things on my head. I have quite a lot of slides, but I'm going to run through them quite quickly. There is not a lot that is very definite about the future yet. It's very much a moving target, but I'll give you some of the ideas, some of the rumors and ideas that are coming out. So what I want to do is there's 5 things I'm going to do. I'm going to say a few things about the value, the added value of LEADER, something about the evolution and where we are now. I want to focus a bit on the ERDF and cohesion policy and the links to CLLD. Something about CLLD as a seed fund for bigger projects, and then finally I'll end up with the future orientations. So let's see if this slide works. Yeah, okay. Some of you may recognize that slide. This slide was sent to me by Yuhamati maybe a couple of years ago, I think. But you will see that the headline is in Spanish, El futuro de líder DLP, as it is called in Spain. That's because I used that presentation, your ideas, Finnish ideas, in presentations in 2 very remote regions in Spain. And I did that because I think the ideas you have there of Leader as a platform, the importance of pilots and the experimental culture of Leader, and Leader as a forerunner, these are absolutely central to the way things are going. I wanted to show it to you again because I think it's important for you to know that your discussions are not just important in Finland, they are important to many other countries in Europe. And I have to say that Finland is definitely at the forefront of what is happening in CLLD and Leader. You have a huge number of very, very interesting experiences and practices and ideas. In fact, some people are saying that there are so many good practices coming out of so few people in Finland that they think maybe you're taking steroids or there's some sort of doping thing going on because you're very, very productive and imaginative in what you're doing. So let me go on. Right, okay. I'm assuming that you are all extremely experienced and knowledgeable people, so there's no need to go through any of the basic principles. The important thing I wanted to say about Leader is that it is the only EU-wide program where local people are in the driving seat, in the sense that they both design the strategies and select the projects. There is no other program like that that covers the whole of Europe. And at a time when people are voting for Brexit, and people are voting for some quite unpleasant exclusive parties and policies all over Europe, and many of this is coming from people from rural areas who feel that they're losing out from the changes of globalization and other things, then a program that actually connects people to the bigger challenges is absolutely central. So that's all I want to say. The important part is the bottom-up part. Okay. The other point I want to make is that within Leader, you have in one program, without having to apply for a whole load of different projects, the possibility of taking an idea from its very early stages in a community all the way up to a sustainable model or business proposition that can be scaled up. That's because Leader, if it's managed well, is able to do a whole load of things like really work with people to identify the needs, training, the feasibility studies, contracts with universities, pilots, small-scale investments and marketing. And the great thing about Leader is being able to design the sequence and the architecture to meet the needs of your particular area. And that's where lag animation is so important. And then the community involvement means that you can move projects that maybe private businesses don't think are initially profitable to the point where investors are really interested in coming in, and this can be scaled up and rolled out. But in order to be able to do this, the system needs to work properly. Okay, it needs to be, so the delivery system and the management is absolutely essential. So just a little bit about the history. I started way back in 1991 in a Leader group, one of the 217 in a very remote area of Spain. During the first 2 periods, Leader 1 and Leader 2, and Leader Plus, in fact, but Leader 1 and Leader 2, this was a community initiative, and we had multi-funding. and it was not complicated. I remember we had ERDF, we had ESF, we had EFRD, and we allocated the funds to different types of projects, but this was not complex, and we were able to approve and fund projects with enormous speed. Then in Leader Plus, the Leader approach was extended to all rural areas, and that already brought in a change because many of the people who came in at that point weren't so experienced, in some cases not so committed, but anyway, it wasn't such a big change. The huge change occurred in the 2007 period, where you can see the number of local action groups was doubled, and the budget was also doubled. And this brought with it, the idea was then mainstreaming Leader. Leader was part of the Axis 3. The idea was that the Leader method was going to be used throughout more extensively in the other more conventional measures. And as you know, I think, what happened in fact was that quite the opposite. The procedures and methods of the other measures were increasingly applied to Leader. And this has created huge things, to the point where now Leader is a measure, and many people mistakenly think that it's just simply another measure rather than a method. And this is one of the biggest causes for confusion and problems, I think. Okay, so let's move on. Please, all the figures I give you are taken from studies, but these are evolving very quickly. And so these figures were the early estimates of the budget and the numbers of lags that countries were going to approve. So this has changed. So I'm not sure whether you have 55 lags now. I don't know the exact number. I don't have that with me at the moment. So please treat this with some caution. But what I wanted to show with this diagram is the huge variety in the size of the budgets, and therefore the things that Leader groups do in different countries. You have Leader groups that have less than 1 million in some places, euros for the whole time, and they are just focusing on some small-scale animation. And then you have some Leader groups that have way over 10 million. We have one Leader group which has, I think, about 40 million in Germany. And so they are doing, infrastructure. So it's hugely different what is happening in different parts of Europe. Hold on. Okay. Now I want to actually give you some information about what came out of the survey on Leader, which went to over 700 people. Over 700 people applied, and what you can see here is I don't know whether I can. Hold on. Yes, there you go. The most important principles for Leader, and you can see very clearly there the bottom-up approach, the partnership, area-based and networking being the most important principles according to these 700 groups. Now remember, this is covering the whole of Europe. So it's about 1/3 of the people replied. Now, when we look at the practice, the bottom-up approach again is very important. What I wanted to bring out to your attention is that Leader groups are saying that they have much more difficulty in supporting innovation and cooperation at this particular time. Then, if we look at the combination of the principles and the practice, there are some very strong messages. A very high proportion of Leader groups right across Europe are saying LAG's ability to implement Leader is constrained by bureaucracy and administration. That admin and reporting requirements limit LAG's capacity for animation and local development. And then on the other side, you see decision-making power of LAG people disagree with this. So they say that decision-making power of LAGs is overly limited by RDP level procedures, and project application procedures are not accessible to local stakeholders. So you can see that we have got to a situation where the delivery mechanisms and systems we're using are not bringing out the full value of the approach. And so what we have, in a sense, if we look at the different levels in Europe, starting with the European level, the national level, regional, and then local people, everybody likes subsidiarity. The lower level always wants subsidiarity. So the national level always wants a bit more power from Europe. The regional wants a bit more power from the national. But everybody says that the subsidiarity stops at them. And then what we find is that at every point in this multi-level governance system, there's a little lack of trust to the lower level. And so some additional rules and regulations are added on at each point. So when it comes to the local people, it can be very complicated. And this is where the big opportunity is now for changing things. So, right. Now, I'm going to give you these up very quickly. This gives you, these are some figures that were produced in 2000 and the end of last year. It shows you the how multi-funding is playing out. And you can see that there are about two-thirds, just over two-thirds, take these figures with a pinch of salt as well. These are changing all the time, so please don't quote them. Look, see them as rough trends. So about two-thirds are being funded by one fund, and about a third, 752, are exploring different combinations of the funds. So that's quite interesting. And when you look at the ERDF and the ESF, you can see, again, it's very interesting. You see, it's really taken off in many of the member states either in Central and Eastern Europe or the South. So Czech Republic has very big ERDF investment, Hungary as well, Portugal as well. But there are issues in all of these. I don't have time to go into them. So what are the types of CLLD that are being supported by ERDF and ESF in cohesion policy? What we have is some of the lags are in smaller areas within cities. So these are usually deprived neighborhoods or sometimes historical centers. Then there are another set of projects which are in small cities and surrounding areas. So they're urban, rural, and this other category as well, urban-rural linkages. And then we have two categories which are very different for LEADER. We have from the ESF and ERDF target group approaches. So approaches focusing, for example, on migration, on Roma and the links between Roma, or on older people and so on. And then we have more thematic group approaches, looking at, say, energy, environment, circular economy, and so on. So these are different because in cities, it's much more complex. There are many more agencies operating. So it's not so easy for LEADER to take a completely integrated, holistic approach. It usually has to fit in with other things that are going on. There you have the distribution of cohesion policy. And you see that a lot of ERDF is still going into the investments in rural areas, so supporting lags, but a lot also, about a third going into strictly urban areas. All right, okay. So I'm just going to give you two examples of ERDF funding. So ERDF funding is being used for large sub-regional areas, basically integrated strategies over quite large areas. This is one of them in southern Italy. There's another one. If I can get this coming out. These are medium-sized sub-regional areas where the ERDF is coming in and basically looking at links between municipalities and their surrounding areas. Now, my next one is, yeah. Now, this is a very interesting example and quite close, I think, to what you're doing in Finland. This is the example of the Tyrol, where they also have ERDF, ESF, and EFRD. And where basically what they're doing is they're using all EU programs and national related to local development are managed through these 9 local partnerships according to the principles of CLLD. So they're linking together things like their smart specialization strategies, some of their research programs, their Interreg, and everything is going through the same thing. So what we have here is in Tyrol, they have basically, in each rural area, there is a platform that brings together all the stakeholders. So not just leader and then somebody on smart specialization, but they're all in one platform together. They have one-stop shop that is doing the local management, so to avoiding double structures at local level between, say, municipal programs or leader programs and so on. And then they have I think these may be a little bit similar to your Eli centers, but they have a governance of all policymakers at the regional level. So one department is ensuring the cooperation between the regional and local level and sort of funneling everything in and making sure that there is synergy and the different programs are working together. So an example of this here is, well, this is one of their projects where they have created basically a project which is covering this is urban-rural linkages. So they have 14 villages working together with a city since 2013. And there they have a very interesting, one of the first things they managed to do was create a local broadband infrastructure with a business model and open sharing for telecom companies. And then they have a series of, now they're working on a series of collective solutions. So common local management of water resources, mobility, smart buildings, and a common strategy for business development. So a very interesting example there of ERDF, ESF, and EFRD working together on local things, but with a bigger dimension. And this again, this is another message. This is a very emblematic, I think, leader group. They were one of the first. They started off in 1990. And they really have this idea of that you have talked about of platforms. And basically, the way they've worked is that they've formed communities of interest around particular subjects in their area. So they have communities of interest around food, around tourism, and around energy. And those communities of interest bring together all the different stakeholders that affect a particular topic. And then they basically used LEADER and other things, Horizon, to seed fund. So small amounts of LEADER to do the training, to do the animation, to do the capacity building, maybe to do some viability studies or some technical studies or whatever. But then they've used that to create the business model. So and they then, with the business model that is working and a lot of community voluntary support, they have managed to attract a lot of other important funding. So they have they managed to get about 4.8 million for the infrastructure of their coastal path, which has been absolutely central to turn the whole island into a walking destination. And they also have, I think, a similar amount they have a very interesting tidal wave energy project, 35 million worth of investment there. And again, they've attracted a lot of ERDF funding on that. So they say local innovation is about little things, but it's progressive development is big things. And I think that's one of the central messages I want to make. And here are some of the projects that we showed yesterday related to smart villages, and this is also some similar sort of ideas. This is a community. Balquhidder is a very small part of Scotland, community about 200 residences that use CLLD to seed fund a community-owned broadband system. The bioenergy villages is very interesting. They basically put about 200,000 euros into business plans for 5 villages, 200,000 in each of the villages, to create a business plan for bioenergy cooperatives. Basically, they've attracted 2.5 million euros in private funding and other local funding for each of those villages for these bioenergy cooperatives. Réseau Pouce is an example of how LEADER is being used to roll out. This is an application, a car sharing and mobility app. It's now been rolled out to 1,500 municipalities in France, and LEADER is being used in each of the different areas to support it being rolled out. This again, I'll leave these, but the last one is very interesting, Kawakat, because this is the way the cooperation measure in LEADER has been used in a very strategic way to bring together co-working spaces right across Catalonia, the whole region. There's I think 14 different co-working spaces. So again, it's the idea that you can start small with LEADER, but then you can use the cooperation measure to build things up and really work at a more strategic level across a whole province or region. And so my question is, these are the items on the urban agenda. And we have low carbon neighborhoods, local circular economies, local energy production, integrating migrants in land and natural use, affordable housing. What is different between that and the rural, what should be a rural agenda? So why can't CLLD deliver on these themes? There's absolutely no reason. I'm coming to an end. Right, I'm now coming to the last bit, the future. So we had the CAP communication. That is the last official document we have had. Some of you may have had all sorts of leaks on the regulations, but I can't talk about those. So the CAP communication and its relation to CLLD says that LEADER and CLLD should focus on bottom-up and the locally driven dimension. It's an instrument to build local capacity. It should contribute to social inclusion, poverty reduction, and job creation. And it needs to achieve better synergy and coordination with municipal authorities and agencies. Those were the key messages from the CAP communication, so you should bear them in mind in your discussions. Now, the CAP communication, as you all probably know, also talked about a new results-based delivery model, which will be much more decentralized. And this has certain challenges and also certain opportunities for LEADER and CLLD. There will be much more flexibility in the design and control of the measure to be done in partnership. So, and the second point, focus on achieving results. So basically, the Commission will no longer be looking at the detailed eligibility rules and legislation and how these are being followed in each member state. They will want to look at whether you have procedures in place which are coherent and transparent. But if you have, you design those procedures. So this means that you have the opportunity to take the best of what you have in Finland and apply it to the CLLD. So we'll no longer have to follow somebody else's method. So I think your discussion in this context is really, really important. There is no one model. As long as your procedures are transparent and coherent and the Commission can see that, you are able to design them to fit your needs. Now, focusing on achieving results, that is really important and very challenging for LEADER because the idea is, as it says there, is lag flexibility, so that the LEADER will not have to just simply mirror the targets that are set at the RDP level. You'll be able to set targets which are not contradictory, but which are relate to your local needs. but you will need to show what you're achieving. And as you know, there has been a lot of discussion about simply having very simplistic criteria like jobs created. And so you really need to start thinking a lot about how to show progress in terms of social capital, in terms of capacity, in terms of innovative projects, which don't necessarily always result in a lot of employment. Okay, so the how you define the results is again going to be something that you need to look at. Leader will have to demonstrate that it can make a difference. So it should not be doing it's not a measure to do the same thing as all the other measures. It's to build capacity, to build linkages, strategic social innovation. And very importantly, this last point, that it can support, it should not just be about the here and now, but about the future, about where rural areas are going to be in the next 20 years. So about transition. It's not just about catching up with cities. It's not just about dealing with the problems. It's about how rural areas can really exploit their real opportunities in terms of a low carbon economy, smart villages, social entrepreneurship, social innovation, all these things. So it has to focus on the bits that are different to the other programs. This is my last slide, I think. Yes, so these are some reflections that were given 2 days ago at the Smart Villages seminar from the representative of the ERDF. There are questions. There was a question about the value of integrating all the funds into one single program. And if that did not happen, the importance of ensuring that the rules of the lead fund were applied to all the other funds. That there should be earmarking, and that whoever is, there should be delegation to the lead fund, and the rules of the lead fund apply. These are all things being discussed at the moment. No conclusions on it. The importance of structures of multi-level governance. So the need to have what we saw in Tyrol, I think what you have with your Eli centres, the need to develop these in a way that really fits the changing circumstances that are taking place in our rural areas, and a plea there for minimum funding for this more flexible approach. So earmarking for all the funds, so that all the funds are putting a certain amount into the pot, really to empower local people to make the most of their assets. So that is me done. And I don't know whether I've gone over my time, because with so many gadgets, I can't really tell. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Your timing was excellent, really, really excellent. And thank you for the very, very interesting presentation about the history of the LIDA and the progress for CLLD, your ideas about the added value of the LIDA both in rural and urban areas, and also the words about the future. And those nice words in the beginning about our work. Of course, that was very kind and polite on your side. Thanks for that as well. So we have a time for questions for the floor. So, do you have something to ask from Paul? Now the line is still open and working quite nicely. So, questions, anyone? Comments? Mario, I come here with the mics.
Hello, this is Mario Tolvanen. I'm Leader Flag Manager, and Urban Leader Manager. I just have one question concerning the future of Leader and CLLD. You told us in the beginning that it was a community initiative, community program. So if you said in the end that it's important to have a good lead fund or program for Leader to work properly, any suggestions or ideas what it might be?
These are things that are being discussed right now. There is a strong demand from the Leader Association, ELARD, and from many other NGOs for having just one common local development fund, so putting everything into one. And most people, well, many people think this would be an ideal solution, so there is no problem in actually demanding that. But it does not seem to be probable in the current circumstances that this will happen. There is, since LEADER has expanded, the Commission has not really had the resources, I think, to manage a community initiative of that size. 2,000, so over 3,000 partnerships with the cuts that are taking place in that. So there is no possibility of a return, as far as I know. But please take these are my opinions. So things may change tomorrow. But there is no possibility of a return to a community initiative. I think it would be very, very interesting if there was one local fund. There may be other alternatives for doing that. So some people have been saying, well, why don't we use an integrated territorial investment, which is an instrument which allows you to combine different funds and different measures. But this you have to look at and see how it works and works in your own country. So that would be another possibility. So if none of those things happen, what is very, very important is the harmonization of the rules between the funds. So there will be more harmonization, but it's unlikely that this harmonization is total. So there will always be some differences because the funds are trying to do different things and they have different objectives. So the important thing then is at local level to try to have a commitment that the fund that is dominant, that their rules apply, so that you don't have to, so that the local action group does not have to follow 4 different types of rules for each project, and then the bureaucracy becomes impossible. So the lead fund option is probably the most realistic, and it's really important to see how it would work in practice.
Thanks, Paul. Any other questions, comments? I can't see any hands here. So now it's pity that you can't be in person here with us. I believe it would be a pleasure to have you in our conversation, which start now. Which will start now in the tables. But anyway, thanks for your presentation. I believe it was an excellent food for thoughts for this event, for this little workshop, but also in the future. So hopefully, if we have any clever ideas, so we'll let you know.
Yes, I was going to say, because the regulations are the draft regulations are going to be out in a few days. So you will have the common provisions regulation and so on. But please, your thoughts are very, very useful for us. So I'm sorry I can't be there, and I would really have liked to have taken part in the conversation. But please do feed through the results of your discussions, because they'll be very helpful for other people.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much about your time and your thoughts. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye bye, Christoph. Bye bye, Paul.
Bye bye.
Tekniikka toimi hyvin, toivottavasti piditte Paulin esitystä mielenkiintoisena, mutta se oli sitä keskustelua, mitä Brysselissä käydään. Siellä tuli myös hyvää slangia. Laura laittokin tuonne noita lyhenteitä.
Mullakin meni tuossa noin kirjaimet väärinpäin tässä maaseuturahaston kohdalla.
Mut kuitenkin, että siellä se, ja Paul viittasi tähän Eli Center, siis se on niin ELY-keskus, ja se tuntee tämän Suomen systeemin hyvin, niin se Eli Center oli ELY-keskus, ja siihen ehti ihmettelemään, että mikä se oli. Mutta tällä pohjalla nyt me ollaan kuultu mielenkiintoisia esityksiä ja kokemuksia Suomen näkökulmasta. Nyt me saatiin tämä Brysselin terveiset. Nyt ruvetaan tekemään töitä pöydissä. Mä tulen vähäksi aikaa tänne, missä sitä näkyy. Moi sinne netin välityksellä. Me tehdään tässä pöydissä töitä noin tunti, eli 14.30 me rupeamme sitten käymään läpi, että mitä me täällä pöydissä saatiin aikaiseksi. Tämä nettilähetys katkeaa vähäksi aikaa, eli noin tunniksi, että jos te haluatte tulla kuulolle, että mitkä olivat keskustelun tulokset, niin olkaa siellä linjoilla noin 14.30, ehkä vähän sen jälkeen, kun me ollaan juuri kaffettakin tässä välissä. Mutta netin välityksellä niin palataan silloin asiaan. Ja täällä aletaan nyt voin jättää tämän muuten tänne.